Hello, good evening. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, taping lecture number 2 for A11, Dawn of the Digital, literature and film, introduction to literature and film. The title of the course, Dawn of the Digital, is just intended to be a gesture toward another seismic shift in communications and in the way that affects us as humans, the way we think of ourselves, the way we think of others, the way we think of the interrelationship one to the other. And yet today, this past week, this past 2 weeks, but even this past week, the dawn of the digital, which was meant also as a gesture toward Dawn of the Dead, the second zombie movie in George Romero's scenario. But today I was watching news and hearing more about QAnon, thinking a bit about Godot in relation to the news that we're seeing. There's no Wi-Fi and waiting for Godot. Now, there wouldn't have even been anything like Wi-Fi known in the 1950s, but it made me realize how unformatted the play is. And that road begins nowhere and ends nowhere, as far as they can tell. They seem to keep showing up next to this tree because they think they have this appointment with Godot, who never shows up, but sends a boy, not the same boy, it would seem, to tell them that he can't make it today, but he will certainly make it tomorrow. But all day long, in both Act 1 and in Act 2, until the boy shows up, they're not even sure they're in the right place. They're not sure it's the right day. They're not sure it's the right time. Now, biographically, Beckett lived through World War II in a farmhouse outside of Paris. And when the Nazis occupied Paris, Beckett worked with the French resistance. And the most difficult thing about the French resistance is, on the one hand, you could walk around as a citizen and you could see what the Nazis were doing, which was very valuable information if you could get it out of Paris. So you would be executed if they found a radio that could broadcast. The Nazis would simply execute you on the spot. So the Gestapo was constantly monitoring airwaves. This is the beginning of a wireless world. And the other way, of course, to pass messages would be to meet someone somewhere who would meet someone else somewhere else and pass along microfilm, perhaps, of troop movements. Any of these things, if you were caught with any of these things, you were executed. And so it ought to be the case that you would be waiting to meet someone to pass off information. And in order to minimize what could be tortured out of you, because I need to take a step back. If you're caught, you would be tortured, and then and you might or might not give up crucial information. So it was best to know only. There was a need to know basis. So typically, you'd be waiting on a dirt road. Someone else will be coming. You have some idea of when the time is, and they'll be giving you a message, and you don't know who it is. You won't know them. You may not see them again. You won't speak. But it could happen that if the person coming to meet you got intercepted by the Nazis and tortured, then they might give the information of where to meet you. So you have no way of knowing when this guy's walking toward you, if it's another French resistance delivering a crucial message, or the Gestapo come to torture and execute you. And there's no way to know. And you can wait there all night. And the other thing, of course, that can happen is that the person who was to meet you gets caught, tortured, executed, doesn't give up your location, and nobody comes. So you're waiting for a fellow resistance fighter or a Godot, hoping that if they show up, that's in fact who they are. And if they don't show up, not having any idea what happened to them, you can't inquire. You just go home and wait to see if you ever get another message again, which you have no idea if that'll happen. You have no idea when that will happen. So there is historical background of something Beckett lived through, which is one of many things that gave him the idea of Godot, because Godot is not simply a play about the French It's a play about existentialism. It's a play about how do we generate meaning? Because one of the shocks of the Nazis taking over Paris is that in the course of just a week or two, it seemed that France, which had been there for centuries, somehow wasn't France anymore. The Germans were just marching through the capital. They marched through the Arc de Triomphe, past all the French citizens, and suddenly nothing was the same. How could that happen? And I think we've been living through that in the last 2 weeks, and it's so recent that it's still hard to believe the images. I mean, who were these people sitting in the same chair as the vice president who had been deliberating on accrediting the American election so that the inauguration could proceed on January 20th? And the sitting president gathered a huge group and told them to march down and let their views be known. It seems to have been brewing, and the Capitol was overrun. Vice President Pence was whisked away minutes before they breached the room. He couldn't get out of the Capitol. He was just in an office down the hall, as were many of the senators and the representatives. And so in a moment, we went from one moment, a building that for 300 years had stood for, however vexatious, a building that had stood for democracy, for the vote, for the votes of the people, brought people to what was called the People's House, and they deliberated on the part of the people that had voted for them, and they didn't, nobody agreed on everything all the time, and it got it could get quite heated, but it had never been breached, invaded, occupied by people, not necessarily everyone, but quite a few who not only were capable of killing, but even seemed anxious to do it. So how does this? I didn't expect to have this example. I've been teaching this book, been waiting for Godot for many years, and it's eerie how every time I teach this book, something's going on in the time frame I'm teaching it that connects to the book. So I've taught this, I've taught this book during the Iraq War and during 9/11, and this book is always there to go back to one of the central problems of our time since World War II, which we call postmodernism, and that is this inability to find an essence to anything that is inviolable. Everything simply exists because for the moment it's positioned in such a way that it is able to exist. Sorry, the neighbor's dogs are going on. They usually don't go on too much. But so what is in essence? How can we depend on the essence from which existence emerges? And the answer is we can't. What existentialism has been almost forced to concede after the events of World War II, after the Holocaust, after the bombing of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the concentration camps, 6 million Jews, other innocent people murdered systematically in a factory-like manner, loaded into gas chambers, loaded into crematoriums, their bodies systematically stripped of gold from their teeth, so that people became nothing more than products. So one of the most horrific, World War I was a mechanical war, but it wasn't a war that was organized by machines. It was a war that was fought by machines. World War II was fought by machines and it was organized by machines. IBM was actually, Hitler was one of their first customers, and they did punch cards back then on the most earliest computers, which is what allowed him to sort out who was Jewish, who wasn't, which camps they were in, which ones were fit to work, which ones might as well be executed now, so they didn't use food. It was, 6 million people. It's not the first genocide by a long shot. There's indigenous people, there's Armenians in the early part of the century. It's the first computer organized genocide, and it is the most efficient genocide ever undertaken. And in my Pepsi myths, as you know, the myth of efficiency which means that everything that gets faster and it's done more quickly is somehow an advance in wisdom. It has no connection. You can be efficient about murdering people. You can be efficient about making deodorant. It's not capitalism that's good or bad. It's amoral. It's not machinery that's good or bad. Those are just capacities. And the issue is how equipped are we to engage those capacities? The other obvious example being that a nuclear bomb can wipe out a city in 60 seconds, or it can energize, light it up, heat it. So waiting for Godot doesn't mean anything because it's about meaning. And in where there's no essence, see, if you have an essence from which existence emerges, the implication is you have also a knowledge that can emerge. But what postmodernism says is all knowledge is constructed. There's no such thing as the truth. There's only approximations of the truth, and some are more proximate than others. Donald Trump has lied, I don't know, 6,000 times every time his lips moved, I think. And yet that became a kind of belief for a lot of people. I mean, that's in the storming of the Capitol, a reality was created out of a fantasy that was constructed. And then so it's when you act on fantasy, it's not really fantasy anymore, even though it was fantasy. So Trump's claiming he lost the election. No proof anywhere, utter fantasy. But once people believed it, stormed the Capitol, 5 people died. That's reality. So reality, we'll talk about this more on the balcony, but reality can be an effect of actuating fantasy so that it approximates for some people a truth upon which they act. And then that doesn't really matter how true it is or isn't. In the QAnon conspiracy theory, which is remarkably pervasive, says very straightforwardly that the Democrats, the other side, are a deep state cabal that both worship Satan and trade and do human trafficking in children in a pedophile ring, and they believe that. There's no evidence, which actually makes them believe it more. I mean, the problem with conspiracy theories, it's like a snake eating its tail. The less you can prove it, the more you can convince yourself it must be true. That's what Trump did with the election. It was actually the lack of any evidence at all that allowed him to credibly argue to his conspiracy people, at least, that if this election were run fairly, there would be some evidence of fraud. So it's completely turned over that because there's no evidence of fraud, then it was obviously fraud. Because they cleaned up the evidence so thoroughly, and the fact that dozens of Republicans that he actually nominated to the position said no, there's nothing here. It doesn't matter. So what we have to, it's really dangerous to live in postmodernism if you believe that knowledge is what people say it is, if you believe that truth is what people say it is. You guys out there can't afford that anymore. I'm not saying you have to live without any idea what's true and what's not true, but you can't trust in the essence of any truth. You're gonna have to do your own work. You're going to have to, and that's why this class is not about so much what to think, but how. Because people who don't have very wide bandwidth for thinking and for analyzing are very vulnerable to demagogues, to people in a Godot-like manner promise to solve everything when they do. In a way, Donald Trump never arrived either. I mean, yes, he showed up, he got elected, he was in the office for 4 years, but he never showed up. There was nothing there other than manipulating power to his own benefit, the levers of power. Trump didn't do anything ever. The only time he wasn't lining his pockets is when he was promoting lies and falsehoods to keep himself in power, to duck the first impeachment, to try and duck the second, which is coming up and it's never happened in the history of America. To be impeached twice, it's never happened to be convicted by an impeachment, and Trump's on track to accomplish both. So his accomplishments are the worst things that have ever happened in American history. How did it get that bad? Well, in a way, Trump he went back to modernism. He went back to saying it's broken, but we can fix it. And modernism is still a part of mainstream thinking, the idea that there is a right way to do things. If we just have to find it, we don't always find it. The idea that there isn't a right way and a wrong way. There's a way that we believe in, and there's a way that we don't, and there's things we're willing to do and things that we're not. This is the fabrication, in a real sense, of making fabric. So truth is more of a fabric than a shining light. If you're careful enough about the truth, you can weave together a fabric that we can all, or most of us, live by. But you can't depend on the fabric to just be handed to you. You're going to have to stitch your own truth from what you're told. So postmodernism is an age where ideology is now the dominant producer of truth and knowledge. And ideology is your imagined relationship to your actual existence. None of us can imagine our existence without reference to something. It used to be God in the age of faith, but when God seemed to disappear, science took the place of God, and once again there was something to believe in. World War II destroyed science as a god, not as a methodology, but certainly as something that was going to save us. And economics has stepped in. It's the current god. It's the current dominant ideology that economics explains everything. So at one time it was the God and the cosmos. Then it was science and the scientific method. Now it's economics, and the economics has become the new wizard. You hear this all the time. We can't do it. That's bad for economics. That's good for economics. That will hurt the economy. That will boost the economy. What is the economy? It's just another Godot. There is no economy. There's people, and there's circulation and exchange, and the rules we have for legitimate circulation and exchange is the combination of politics and economics. We're capitalism, there's communism, there's socialism, there's other forms. Canada has a more socialist dimension than the States because it has universal health care and relatively affordable secondary education. Because the other new God, I don't know if this is whether we're moving from the age of economics to what I might be tempted to call the age of debt, or whether that's still a subcategory of economics being the dominant ideology. But debt seems to be currently ruling our lives. I mean, you may not know who you are, but MasterCard does. You can have all the existential crises you want. Your bill will arrive in your name with a set amount, and that will be 18% compounded monthly. And it is not impossible to get to a point where you're struggling to pay the minimum payment, which means you're not paying down the debt really at all. And that can be what, and I'm jumping ahead of myself. That can be what 2020, I'd say starting around 1990, which we won't get to till the end of this class, but I think since 1990, a sense of debt has replaced our wondering about existence. And in a funny way, it's almost welcome. See, the reason Godots are so welcome is they distract you from the void of wondering who you are, why you are, where you are, when you're not. These are all questions that we distract ourselves from. The slogan of my lectures on Godot that I've given you guys is that waiting is an awareness of being brought on by an absence of doing. So that's what's unique about waiting. What's unique is that you are waiting to do. But since you can't do because you're waiting, there's nothing except to be. And that's uncomfortable. Now, it wasn't uncomfortable or as uncomfortable in the age of faith because you had a soul and you were connected to a God, and he knew who you were, and your job was to try and figure it out, but it was a known quantity to a divine being. There's no spiritual accountant anymore. If you don't know who you are, nobody does. Even when you do know who you are, that's just a version of who you are, and that can crash. And so the modern age was an age of anxiety. because we were so worried about whether we'd ever get back to a sense of order. Now, the age of economics is an age of depression. And because it's funny that depression is an economic term. We talk about the Great Depression. And we will keep worrying about, are we currently in a depression? So the way postmodern economy is a similar structure to the self. It constantly is trying to move forward, myth of progress, myth of efficiency. It has the strictly unbelievable idea that things can always go up. I mean, things will never go down. Every time the market goes down, it's viewed as some kind of misfortune, but it's in the nature of the market to go up and down. That's what it does. What goes up comes down. And somehow we've perpetrated this myth that a good economy is one that never comes back down. So profit upon profit upon profit. But where's the profit going? Because there is a tendency in the stock market, money makes money. It's not labor that makes money. So you're not even in the stock market unless you have capital. Capital is excess money. Money that's not capital is money that's in circulation. Money that's capital is money that's not in circulation, so it can generate more money, but it doesn't make anything. It doesn't manufacture anything. It doesn't create anything. It's, in fact, both the Islamic faith and the Judaic faith considered charging interest a sin. I'm not an expert on this, but I believe the Islamic faith is still, concerned about that. That there's something obscene and sinful about making money without going to people, without involving any work. So charging interest was seen as intrinsically immoral. Like if you want to lend somebody $100, fine, but don't ask for 200 back. You haven't done anything. And the only reason interest began to seem like possibly a reasonable idea is that people would borrow $100 from you, and then they would do something and make 500. And then it seemed not so unreasonable of you to ask for a share of what your money allowed. It seemed like maybe your money had done something. It had allowed this. I'm using low numbers just to make the point, but maybe your friend opened a restaurant and it's doing really well, and so you get a return on your investment. You get back more than you gave. But it's also the case that if your friend's restaurant went bankrupt, now maybe if it's your friend, you'd write off the loan, but let's say it isn't. Let's say it's some bank. When the restaurant falls apart, you still owe. People aren't going to write off the debt just because your idea failed. Education, I don't have to, this is in my notes, but I don't have to tell you guys, and this has gotten much worse since I was in university. There was almost, compared to now, there was very little university debt. I never went into debt. I got a few scholarships, I worked, but the tuition was commensurate with being able to do that. Because tuition is unaffordable for almost everybody in the States. It's unaffordable certainly for some people in Canada, but U of T is around 7,000, I think. You could correct me, but on average it's 35, 40, 50,000 in the States, and most people, they can't afford it. So then the bank stepped up and said, well, you're getting an education, so we'll give you a loan. And I had a small loan, and at that time, and I was in the States, I went to Brown University, and the rule was they can't even charge you interest or ask for any repayment until you've been out of school for a year. This used to be the rules. And I never left school. I went and I got a doctorate, so I didn't pay, I think it was a $5,000 loan, and I didn't have to pay $1 for 7 years. And then there was no interest. And then when the loan did start clicking, because I got my first job, it was a very low interest. It was half the rate of a house mortgage, and it wasn't really all that difficult to pay it back and not just be paying some minimum. But now you guys are leaving university and graduate school, and in the States it's much worse, already crippled by debt, and that begins to become your Godot. And I mean, if your grade point average is your Godot now, your credit card debt load is going to be your Godot next. It's you're told that you'll just have some future where you're in charge and everything will be clear. But living in the age of economics means that economics tends to replace God as the thing that organizes our means of experiencing and affecting all our decisions. If you're $50,000 in debt when you get out of graduate school, you're not that free to shop around for a job that really resonates with you. You've got to get a job fast, and it may not be the one you prefer. You've got to get going on that debt load. It may affect in your relationships, whether you get married or not, whether you have a child or not, when and if you can buy a car or a house. Do you do rent, or can you afford a mortgage? And so everything is debt in the marketplace. And Trump was a kind of patron saint of the market. I mean, he claimed that he was some kind of wizard of the market that would fill everybody's pocket. So again, going back to Godot, what Beckett has done that has made this play kind of immortal is he gave us a play about nothing. So we can think about how does something come from nothing? Because there's nothing in this play, and nothing ever comes from this play. I mean, when the play is over, it's really, they're just going to sleep on the side of the road again and get up and do it again. That famous last stage direction is they say, let's go, we can't. Why? We're waiting for Godot. Oh, and then the last stage direction, they do not move. I actually knew a rock band that called themselves They Do Not Move. They didn't become huge. It was kind of an inside joke, but it was a great title for a band if anybody else wants to renew that. So if we look at the first line of Waiting for Godot, the play opens, we see two men on stage. One man, and we'll learn his name is Estragon, is trying to get his boots off. And the other man, we'll learn his name is Vladamir, is kind of pacing around. So we see right from the beginning the difference in the two tramps. Estragon is much more sedentary, like literally, but also in terms of his thinking. He just doesn't see the point of doing anything because there's nothing to be done. And that is literally the opening line of the play, which Estragon says. Now, if you break down that sentence, nothing to be done, you have the words nothing, you have the words to be, and you have the words done. So the whole play is in the opening sentence in a way, because how do you get from nothing to done? Well, you have to be. But when you get from nothing to done by being, what you've done is not who you are. It's who you are that is the bridge between nothing and what's done. But in postmodernism, because we don't know how to explain the void, we don't know how to explain the nothingness from which we came, we deliberately conflate who we are with what we do. I mean, how many parties have you been to where people will come up and say, if they haven't seen you, and they're like, hey, how are you doing? No one comes up to me at a party and says, how are you being? Which is really probably a more interesting question. I mean, I don't know how I'm doing. I'm not doing. I'm standing here. And then, of course, the next question is, what do you do? Meaning, I guess, my job. And that seems an important question at parties in the early stages. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a professor. Oh, I guess I better watch my English. Why? I don't care. You think I'm going to correct your grammar at a cocktail party? And then, but anyway, it becomes a starting point of a conversation. What do you do? What are you doing? What are you doing here? Well, I'm being. What are you doing? I'm not very fun at parties, but I don't get the point, to be honest. I don't think it's because I'm a party pooper, but I suppose I am. I guess I don't mean to be. I just don't get it. Why are you people being in a state as if you're doing? I mean, what is being done at a party? Nothing. But it's a party of celebrating everybody's story about what they're doing. How are you doing? Where you been? And that's why I like to have parties all the time. We don't have to have parties for anything anymore. Let's party. It became a verb somewhere in the 60s. Instead of going to a party, you just partied. And they're distraction celebrations to promote the illusion that what you do is who you are. I'm not against them, and I don't judge them. I just don't see how necessary they are. I like to talk to people, but I don't have to party, because that seems to not be talking to people. The music's super loud. The person I'm talking to asks a question, and then they look over my shoulder to see if there's somebody more important that they might want to talk to while I haven't even finished answering what I thought was their actual question. So they're scanning the room. They're taking selfies to prove later that they were there. I mean, if parties are about being, why do you have to photograph yourself to prove that you were there? Why do you have to go home and look on Facebook to see if that was really you? Because, parties are a lot like Waiting for Godot, weirdly enough. They look like the opposite, right? The music's pumping, the people are laughing and shouting, but they're the same thing. The only difference between Waiting for Godot and going clubbing is that the clubbing is a much better distraction machine. There is no distraction machine on Godot. There's no disco ball. There's no music. We have such portable music now that you can turn any place into a concert. We are so phobic about waiting because we are so committed to the only defense we have against the depression that we don't know who we are is the distraction of thinking that what we do is how we are, that being is doing, but it's not. You have to be to do, but you doing is only a subcategory of being. So nothing done is to be, nothing to be done. There's never anything to be done. The idea that something is to be done, we've made up. The only reason something's done is that we've constructed a causality where we're finished. So you take out the garbage, and someone says, "Did you take out the garbage?" And you say, "Oh yeah, that's done." It's not done. I have to do it again next week. Nothing's done except death, which is relevant here because if you can't think about being without knowing that you're not here forever. So we're not just phobic about being, we're phobic about dying. And the kind of deal with the devil that we've kind of made is distract me from my being so I don't have to think about death. That's not going to make death never show up. I mean, if it did, maybe it would make sense. But what happens then is distract me from being so I don't have to think about dying. And one day I'll be dying and then I'll realize that I forgot to live. Because living is wondering about being. So when people are, when you say to people, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they say, "Oh, living the life." I'm like, no, you're not. Because you're just focused on doing and focused on the things that doing gets you. But you're not being. As I said I think I said in A10, but it applies here too, that the mystery of life is to ask the question, what is life? There's not an answer to that question, or rather the answer to the question is the question. That's what being is. Being has no answer. It is the thing to explore, and you're not going to be done. There's no way to be done with wondering about yourself. So he says nothing to be done. Now, I should emphasize that another way to think of Vladamir and Estragon from the beginning is Estragon is much more interested in the physical. And Vladamir keeps trying to embroider the realities of physicality with history, religion. I mean, he goes through all the major discourses, even money. And he keeps he really keeps trying to move things over from being to doing. And Estragon is just an anchor who keeps yanking the doing back out of being. And he can get away with it in this play because there's so little distraction. I mean, the only distraction they have is looking forward to Godot coming, which never happens. And so Estragon says, nothing to be done. And then Vladimir starts kicking in. Notice how many more words Vladimir uses in the opening exchange. I'm beginning to come round to that opinion. All my life I've tried to put it from me, saying, Vladimir, be reasonable. You haven't yet tried everything. And I resumed the struggle. He broods, turning to Estragon. So, there you are, again, Estragon. Am I? Estragon's a hilarious existential comedian, so you may not get the jokes. But just because someone says, there you are, what does that even mean? Because where I am is not also not my being. And I think I put in the notes the story of my nephew when he was 2 years old. And I went up to wake him from a nap, and he had awakened just before I arrived, and he had just sat up, and I heard him say, where am I? And then, being a scholar, I decided to wait because it seemed like an interesting question, and I was wondering how he was going to answer it. And nothing happened. He didn't move. Nothing happened. Let me emphasize that. Nothing. And then he finally said, oh, here I am. So what happened? He woke up like, where am I? Here I am. He didn't do anything. So it took a minute for memories to come back, to recognize something in the room, maybe a stuffed animal or a mirror. And then he's like, oh, here I am. But it didn't quite answer the question. It did answer the question where he was. It didn't answer the question who he was. And we like to confuse those two things too, that if we know where we are, we know who we are. And so we love Google and Google Maps, and we never get lost. We're always lost. Just like you can never get anything done, you're never going to be found. You can find, you can look, you can search, you can explore, but nothing's done because there's always more to do, and nothing's found because there's always other places to go. And you're never more lost than when you think you know where you are. Because if you think you know where you are, you're not even trying to find where you are. And if you believe, I was with someone once when we were in Disney World, of all things, and we were looking for some, horrible attraction, and I saw it, and I said, "Oh, there it is, the Hall of Presidents," I think, but this person I was with wouldn't look up from the map and said, "It's not here on the map," and I said, "Oh, so then I guess it's not here." I'm looking at it, and she's looking at the map, and it's like, you can't be looking at the Hall of Presidents because I'm looking at the map, and it's not here. And then we went into the Hall of Presidents, and it was one of the presidents was broken, and I think Abraham Lincoln's voice box didn't work, so he kept standing up, moving his lips, and not saying anything. And then George Washington would cut him off. The Hall of Presidents was broken. Well, that was kind of a prophecy. But that was 20 years ago. But so Estragon says, am I? And then notice Vladimir kind of ignores it. Like, this is an existential dilemma, because in the modern age and in the age of faith, where you go from having a soul to having a self, there was still this presumption that that you had some kind of essence, and then you worked out of that essence, who you are emerged. But the crisis of postmodernism is that doesn't hold anymore. Now what happens is we find ourselves dropped into existence. Like, where am I? Oh, here I am. But that second here I am is already a narrative. It's a story about yourself. It's a story about who you are. And that becomes a self-construction, which allows us to navigate life. What I call necessary, well, actually Wallace Stevens called a necessary fiction. The self is a necessary fiction. It's a fiction, but it's necessary. We need it. You can't get up and go to a job. You can't get up and take a test if you don't have a self that keeps relatively organized who you think you are. It's not who you are, it's who you think you are. And it's only by thinking it that you are, which isn't being. And that's what Descartes got wrong when he said, I think, therefore I am. No. And anyway, before he said that, he said, I doubt, therefore, no, he said, the only thing I'm certain of is doubt. And then he realized that being certain of doubt was a thought. And if he'd had a thought, he must be. And so then he said, I think, therefore I am. But thinking and amming is not the same thing. Thinking is not being. Thinking and doing is not being. And we've conflated them all so that we're supposedly these thinking, being, doing people. Those people storming the Capitol thought they were thinking, they thought they were doing, and they thought it all came together in a sense of being. I mean, and they were all decked out in their hats and their tattoos and their regalia. They couldn't plaster enough things on themselves to make it seem as though they were. In fact, they aren't. They aren't, because they're acting out somebody else's ideology, which they've been persuaded comes from inside of them. In fact, it's been imposed on them. But the pain of not knowing who they are is so, and it is painful, makes them vulnerable to doing what someone else tells them will be who they are. So you can say to that crowd, I know who you are. You're patriots. And you're patriots because you're going to storm the Capitol, because you're smart enough to know that this election was fraudulent, and you're special, as Trump said, and we love you. And now stop killing people and go home. And because, you know, unless you take back the country for me, I don't have a use for you. He threw them under the bus the very next day. Said, we will hunt you down. You will be, and he didn't write the speech. He read it like a robot. So, but Trump's a good con artist, and con artists know how to trick you into thinking that what they tell you to be is merely them seeing who you are. Being told what to be is not coming out of a place where someone sees who you are. Even in the case of parents who love you, it's a challenge both for the children and the parents. The parents want you to be happy, which means, at least theoretically, they want you to be who you are that makes you happy, but they also think they know what would make you happy is to go to med school. It's, certainly would make them happy, and maybe it'd make you happy too. I'm not saying they have to be apart, but parents, out of love, can overstep sometimes and really push hard for you to be what they're convinced you are. And you can get really confused as the child because you love them, and children, you don't really know who you are. So there's a tendency to be like, maybe they know. I guess they know who I am. They're my parents. They kind of created me biologically. And you can try and sit with that for a long time, or even your whole life. But it can create a lot of crises if parents really impose a very strict idea of who you are and implant it in you as your essence, and then you have to follow, and you're less and less in control, because the less what you do is about you, then the less able you are to stop doing it, because it just opens you back up to this chasm that you haven't had a chance to explore. Who am I apart from what my parents want, or my relationships want, or my country, or my job? Who am I, late at night when there's nobody around, when I'm not tweeting, when the screens are finally off? And the answer is, the answer of knowing who you are is knowing that being, it's a verb, it's a gerund, there is no way to know who you are. There is only a way to check in with your being, with the fact that you are is the closest you're going to get to knowing who you are. You can't know who you are. You can't think who you are. You can feel when you're in a position where you feel out of sync with yourself, so to speak. And that's important. So listening to your gut, quote unquote, can become very important, because the gut, at least in this metaphor, suggests that you're actually trying to connect, not where I am, not what I'm doing, not why I'm doing it, not what I still have to do, none of those. What am I now? I mean, how much of the day are you where you are because that's where you are, as opposed to where you need to be? So you're listening to this tape because you need to listen to the tape if you want to do well in the midterm, if you want to keep your GPA high, if you want to get into your graduate school, if you want to get your job, you want to get the relationship, the car, the house, whatever else that involves, which means that you're never there. You're never where you are. The only reason you are where you are is because of where you want to be, and that's not where you are. And that's why I think the biggest fantasy word of postmodernism is yet. You're not perfect yet. You're not efficient yet. You're not satisfied yet. We haven't gone far enough yet. We haven't innovated the perfect thing yet. And it's right in the second sentence of the play. Vladimir, be reasonable. You haven't yet tried everything. So that's how you can substitute doing for being for your entire life, is just by saying that instead of saying this, that what I'm doing isn't making me happy, you could say, well, well, who am I? Who is this person that's unhappy? But instead, you wind up saying, what am I doing wrong? Is it my career? Is it my relationship? Is it my diet? Is it, it's endless. And you forget to ask the important question, which is not what am I doing that is making me unhappy, but how am I using doing to try and avoid whatever is happy or unhappy? And the tramps can't avoid anything. They suffer for us, but the brilliance of this play is the audience suffers too. You buy, nowadays you know what you're getting if you buy a ticket for Waiting for Godot. It's one of the most famous plays in the world. Beckett won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and for this play and some others and some novels. Almost no one buying a ticket to this play is going to not know that it's a play where nothing happens twice. But that wasn't true when it opened. And so the audience is just as trapped as the two people on stage. What Beckett's done rather brilliantly is he didn't write a play that was going to distract you. There's no distractions in the play. So it doesn't seem like a play at all. But that's partly because we haven't realized how much we rely on plays and movies and videos to distract us. So a play about nothing is going to be resented, possibly as some kind of fraud. But really, the anger that Waiting for Godot generated was, you tricked me into waiting. You wrote a play called Waiting for Godot, and then you made me wait for Godot along with these two tramps, and you made me wait for him twice. And now, thank God, I can go home, and I guess these tramps are damned to go through this. But how dare you charge me $20 to do nothing? I didn't come here to do nothing, because when you do nothing, what happens is you're exposed to the mystery of your own being. And that's why we get mad when a friend's late. Like, where have you been? It's been a half an hour. I have things to do. And you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I had to do this other thing. And so the tyranny of doing, and we love to be busy. And like, oh my God, I'm so busy. And how am I going to get all this done? It doesn't matter that much. Not as much as we are taught to think. And so often, what's making us unhappy is not that we aren't doing the right thing, but that we're doing so much, and that we're not. And it's not a right or a wrong thing. It's that we keep trying to replace being with doing. Yeah. So there you are. Am I? Well, I'm glad to see you back. I thought you were gone forever. Now, what Vladimir moves to here is relationship. So subjectivity is also close to being, but it's not the same thing. In other words, when someone comes in the room that that affects things. I mean, if you like them, you stop what you're doing, you say hi, you say how are you, they say I'm fine, how are you? So when you meet someone else, there's a shared subjectivity, and subjectivity is generated by otherness. So you have a subjectivity when you're alone, but that tends to be just a remembered sense of who you are when you're with other people. So you may be proud of yourself on some point. You may be embarrassed about something else. You may be disappointed in another thing, guilty about yet another, ashamed about yet another, and all at once and all at the same time. And it depends on who walks in the room. Obviously, when your mom walks in the room, it's not the same as a partner or as a lover. You don't feel the same. You don't react the same. So subjectivity is that sort of invisible thing that generates itself between two people. It's not in Vladimir, it's not in Estragon. It's in the relationship. Now, Vladimir is much more interested in the relationship than Estragon. As most of Estragon's comments end a conversation, Vladimir has to keep resuming the conversation, and he won't hug Estragon for the most part. Like, let me give you a hug. No, not now. And Estragon doesn't really want to be in a relationship, but he doesn't want to be alone either. So yet another way to look at this is that Estragon is the body and Vladimir is the mind. So that you could argue that in looking at this play where there's two people on stage, but it's actually two components of any single person. So you and I, inside me, inside you is a Vladimir and Estragon. Inside me, so I have a body, and the body might work out or have a great meal, or you know, be with someone we're attracted to physically, and the body will be going through its things. And then there seems to be the mind. And Descartes famously splits these. When he says, I think, therefore I am, nowhere in that sentence is what the body's supposed, where's the body supposed to be? Because the body's not thinking in Descartes, the body's not being. So what Descartes makes the body sound redundant. The body is just your receptacle. It's just a thing that your thinking and being resides in. But this is the basis of depression in postmodern society, because we cut ourselves off from the body, and we lose that arbiter, that the gut, if you will, the feelings about things. And most of the time, we're not sorry to cut ourselves off from the body, because it's a very persistent, sometimes uncomfortable thing. It gives us uncomfortable feelings. It gives us anxiety. It gives us physical pain. We would, in a way, we prefer to keep the body at bay, and we have an avalanche of pharmaceuticals, over the counter, under the counter. You know, everything, aspirin, Zoloft, and I'm not against pharmaceuticals. We're pointing out, because they can be useful, but I'm pointing out that if we use them to sort of, you know, choke off the body, the way you would put have to put something around your arm. If your arm were cut, you have to clamp it so that you don't bleed out. And we almost treat the body like that sometimes. We don't want the body bleeding out into our thinking, being, doing triad, because it's really the body that is, and everything else is an attempt to come to terms with that. So thinking is not being, as I've said repeatedly. Being is being. The only thing that is being, and then everything else is an attempt to translate being into something that we feel we can control and make consistent through space and time. So identity and so on. So Estragon says, I'm glad to see you back. I thought you were gone forever. And again, Estragon's not very helpful. He says, me too. Estragon thought he was gone forever. But notice Estragon doesn't say, I missed you, or I thought you were gone forever. So the body doesn't dialogue with the mind, which is why the mind can drive itself crazy. And depression is another way to choke off feelings. So instead of feeling sad or angry or anxious, you try not to feel anything. And so depression it can have physiological components, and antidepressants can be useful, but at base, one of the problems is that feelings are a liability in postmodernism. They don't seem to help. They scare the hell out of us, because they keep poking us, saying, that's not being, you're not being, shopping's not being, working's not being, loving's not being. And you're like, shut up, you know, because this is working for me. I think shopping can be being. So yeah, you know, I shop, therefore I am. Now, leave me alone. I'm going to the mall. And the Scarborough Town Center slogan, center yourself, the Scarborough Town Center. You don't center yourself. But it is the hall of distractions. It is a temple to distractions, to all the stores, all the things you can buy, all the things that seem to be, it's a gigantic yet. You know, everything there is something you haven't bought yet, something you haven't tried on yet, something that you haven't owned yet, something that you haven't tried yet, which is going back to Vladimir's sentence, you know, but Vladimir, you haven't tried everything yet. You haven't gone to the mall. You haven't taken up horseback riding. You haven't got a Peloton, which is kind of, I looked into getting a stationary bicycle, you know, because there's no gyms and stuff. And I looked at the Peloton stuff and scared the hell out of me. You can do it. You're on fire. Keep going. And I had to felt like I had to put my computer under the blanket, or they were going to come get me. I just wanted a little bike. You know, I was going to pedal it. I didn't need all these ninja exercise people coming down the ceiling on their rope saying, go harder, that's not good enough, I want to see you sweat. I'm like, do we know each other? So if I do get a Peloton, because someone said to me, oh, it's the best one, I was like, okay, but can I make sure those people don't come to my house, virtually or literally, because they seem insane. I'll let you know how the Peloton thing works itself out. But also, it's funny that exercise is in the gym, and then the Peloton is trying to reproduce the gym experience in the home, and it's about distractions again. I mean, most gyms, certainly if you go to exercise classes, there's often music, and there's a reason the person's up there saying, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to translate motion into progress. So, which is hard on a stationary bike. So they keep translating how hard you're pedaling to what you're accomplishing. So they turn that into a doing as well. And so instead of being in your body, they're like, that's a mile. That's okay. 10 more of those. 5 more of those. Everything's numbers. Everything is. It's like they're mapping out. Which is why I've always preferred running. Actually running down the street through a meadow or something, because there isn't as much distraction. And of course, people have the headphones now, and I'm not judging it, but you can go running down the street with a Rolling Stones concert in your head. And I'm just pointing out this pattern everywhere of distracting you. Everything has to be translated into doing, and then the doing has to be misrecognized as being. And then we have these Fitbits, and so that you know how many steps you've taken all day long, and whether you've met your goal. My watch keeps telling me what my goal is. I never told it what my goal was. It doesn't know. And your goal was 5,000 steps. You've done 4,006. Take a walk. It just starts beeping. And it all gives this illusion of accomplishment, progress. I'm not against all of it, but I just want, the purposes of this lecture especially, I really just want to talk to you that we're in postmodern age of depression because we've completely decided to distract ourselves from being by never having to wait. Notice what a selling point it is to get a computer that downloads faster. What does that even mean? So you don't have to wait. And it's all about no waiting. And Amazon Prime delivers in 1 day now, so you don't have to wait for the thing that you bought. And Uber Eats and all the rest of it will get your food to you faster. We have fast food. Again, what the hell does that mean? Did Kentucky Fried Chicken can outrun a meal at a sit-down restaurant? I know technically what it's supposed to mean. The food has gotten to you so fast, you got time for what? For getting back to doing, because see, eating it's harder to be doing while you eat. So a lot of families will say, no cell phones at the dinner table, because they want to try to have at least a subjectivity going on and not everybody staring at their screens distracted. And in a way, the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, when Neo finally discovers that what he thinks is his life is a distraction, and that his actual life is that he's in a vat with the energy of his body being used to run machines. That's a metaphor for ideology. If we're not careful, we're all like that. Ideology is your imagined relationship to your actual existence. To say the very least, Neo's depressed and he doesn't even know it. He actually feels depressed in what he thinks is his life. So when the movie opens, he's just this sad, sunken guy who just computer hacks all day and feels like, I don't get it. There's something behind everything. And Morpheus will finally explain to him what's the Matrix. The Matrix is ideology. The Matrix is what your imagined relationship to your actual existence. And the problem is that if your ideology is so dominant, you could be in a vat somewhere being used by people, the way Trump used all those people who stormed the Capitol, many of whom are going to jail. And he won't do anything. In fact, he said he'd prosecute them just the moment that makes him look better. So they're kind of screwed. They didn't realize they were in a vat and that Trump was feeding off their energy. But that might as well be the Matrix. And then once he can't use their energy anymore, they can go rot. As far as they can rot in jail, drop dead. It doesn't matter. He was just feeding off an energy. And as soon as they can't provide that service, they have no other function. Which is another danger of postmodernism, is that sometimes we try and appease our chronic wondering about who we are by being of service to someone, which isn't, on the face of it, a bad thing. It's just that you have to be careful that you're not offering your services to a con artist, to someone who acts like they're giving you something back, but they're not, or who's selling you back an illusion about who you are in return for draining your life resources. So they continue together again at last. So notice how Vladimir tries to make an occasion out of things, a celebration, an event. Nothing's an occasion or a celebration or an event to Estragon. Everything is, I either can get my boots off or I can't. And if I can't get my boots off, there's nothing, to be done. So Vladimir is constantly trying to turn. There's no history in this play. There's no events. There's no ways for anything to happen. Because in order for something to happen, it has to be connectable to things that have happened. But because this play is such a perfect circle, nothing's ever happened. Nothing is happening. Nothing ever will happen. There's only now. There's no time in this play. This play is a nightmare of an awareness of being that is impossible to mitigate with the distraction of doing. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to be done. So together again at last, we'll have to celebrate this. How? What are they going to do? Knock on the tree? But how? He says, get up till I embrace you. So notice that this is sort of like what I was saying about partying. Let's celebrate. What? And it doesn't matter. How do we celebrate? Nothing. Okay, let's hug. Why? I don't know. Because you hug when you're celebrating. What are we celebrating? I don't know. Just hug. And Vladimir won't do it. Not now. Not now. Of course, it's only now with Vladimir. So there's no difference with Vladimir between his saying not now and not ever. It's the same thing because his now is forever. Vladimir, on the other hand, never has a now. He only has a yet. So you've got on this stage, you have now and yet. And maybe that's what we're like inside our own minds. We struggle to have a now, but we're constantly distracted with the yet. And yet I need something else, and not now. And can I celebrate where I am by hugging, by partying, by doing something? But as I said, waiting is an awareness of being brought on by a lack of doing, and we find it virtually intolerable. And Beckett really forces the people who come to this play to have nothing to do. They came to be distracted from their lives, to take a break from what they're doing. Because what happens then is you're either doing or you're distracting yourself from not doing. So you can go to a play or a movie to be entertained. You're not expected to be ambushed by an overwhelming sense of being that is unmitigated by any capacity to do. So Vladimir says, when I think of it all these years, but for me, where would you be decisively? You'd be nothing more than a little heap of bones at the present minute, no doubt about it. So here Vladimir is trying to he's still building relationship, right? I've helped you, you'd be dead, you wouldn't be here. Estragon's like, and what of it? What's your point? So I'm here because you did something. If you hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here. Well, I wouldn't know it. So what difference does it make? So things like gratitude or alliances, they just don't translate for Estragon, and the conversation just keeps falling down. It's like a teeter-totter that doesn't work. It doesn't work if the other person won't push up, so you can go down and push up. So they're on a broken teeter-totter the whole play. I'll stop blathering, Estragon says, and help me off with this bloody thing. So he's referring to the boot. Vladimir, hand in hand from the top of the Eiffel Tower among the first. We were respectable in those days. Now it's too late. They wouldn't even let us up. Estragon tears his boot. Finally, Vladimir says, what are you doing? And there's an irony here that Vladimir has been trying to engage Estragon, and he hasn't noticed Estragon. He's so involved in fitting Estragon into his own self-constructed narrative. They didn't actually, he's yet to see Estragon. And finally, he does see Estragon, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And he says, "What are you doing, Estragon? Taking off my boot. Did that never happen to you? The boots must be taken off every day. I'm tired of telling that. Why am I telling you that? Why don't you listen to me, Estragon? Help me. It hurts? Hurts. He wants to know if it hurts. No one ever suffers but you," Vladimir says. "I don't count. I'd like to hear what you'd say if you had what I have. It hurts? Hurts. He wants to know if it hurts. You might button it all the same." Vladimir, true. So they made that referring to some kind of prostate problem. Beckett was once asked for permission to stage Waiting for Godot with women, which sounded like a potentially interesting idea. And he said, "No, you can't. I can't allow that." And they said, "Why?" And he said, "Women don't have prostates." So I was like, sorry I asked. But these men they're aging. They have prostate problems. Their groin hurts. And that's physical pain. But they don't want to, Estragon wants to sit with his physical pain to the point where he's overwhelmed by it. And Vladimir doesn't want to feel this physical pain. And that's typical of the mind versus the body. Distract yourself from the physical pain. But Beckett rewrote Descartes' line. And so instead of "I think, therefore I am," Beckett changed it into "I suffer, therefore I may be." So that living is wondering what your suffering is trying to communicate. That's closer to being than doing. And it doesn't mean life is suffering. It means that there is suffering in life. It's unavoidable, not least of all because of mortality. Pets and even people that you care about will get sick. They can die, and you can get sick. You can die. There is loss in this. Life is also loss, and modernity has tried to celebrate itself by claiming that its inventions and so on will eliminate loss. Like, you don't have to lose anything. You can just invest, and you'll always make money, and you'll never lose. And they've eliminated another important part of dealing with life and experiencing life through suffering, which is sacrifice. In the age of faith, sacrifice was fairly routine. You would take a lamb that you could sit down and have a meal with, and you would burn it to give it to God. And in essence, saying, and I use that word deliberately, I'm giving up this perfectly good lamb just to show you that I know there's more than eating a lamb to life, and that I appreciate that somehow. So sacrifice is giving with no expectation of return, which makes absolutely no sense in capitalism. Christ said, "Throw your bread upon the waters and it will return to you 100-fold," by which he meant if you throw one loaf of bread out into the ocean, 100 loaves of bread will come to shore. Well, that's, don't do that. It's not going to happen. It's not exactly what Christ meant. It's a parable, but so as a practicality, it's nuts. Throw a loaf of bread in the water and you've lost a loaf of bread. The point Christ is trying to make is sometimes by throwing away things that we don't have to throw away, that sacrifice will bring us much more. You can't, the implication behind here is you can't keep it unless you give it away. I mean, that's people have said that about love. If you're trying to keep love, that is, be possessive of the one you love and take what you like from the relationship. But whenever there's an inconvenience, you're busy, then you're going to lose the relationship because you didn't give it away. You've got to give away to a relationship without necessarily getting anything in return. That's the movement from negotiation to intimacy, which I'm going to be talking about with Hollywood romance. But in modernity, it's very hard to go from negotiation to intimacy because capitalism is negotiation and there is no intimacy. Intimacy is moving on from negotiation. It's where you stop keeping track. You can't be sure who's done the most nice things for the other person in the week. And there's a vulnerability to that, and there's also an enormous sense of location and of being in a relationship of mutual reciprocity. It's fair enough with people you barely know to wonder if you bring them back a coffee and you pay for the coffees, fine. You do it, and let's say you do it all week, and then you don't, and they go to the coffee shop for the entire next week and every day bring back their cup and never once buy you a cup. Will you keep doing it? Well, you could, but it depends on whether you saw this as, at that point, it's still a negotiation. Like, I got you coffee. There's no contract here that says you have to get me coffee. And you don't even have to get me coffee every time. And maybe I won't get you coffee every time. We'll just do it when we think of it, and it'll be nice. It's this thing they've done recently where people pay for the guy behind them in the McDonald's drive-through, and then they see how long that goes on, where you buy your meal and the meal of the person, well, your meal's been bought by the person in front of you whom you don't know and will never meet. And so you buy the meal of the guy behind you whom you never know and never met. And it's a kind of weird, it's a little trend right now, and it's kind of a nostalgia for sacrifice. But it feels good and vulnerable to give without knowing that it'll ever come back to you. And even when it does, it won't be the thing you gave away. So with capitalism translated sacrifice into investment. So you give things away, but you expect a return. And if you don't get a return, you're either angry or you don't invest anymore. You don't want to throw good money after bad. That's not a relationship. That's not intimacy. That's investment, and with interest, which we talked about before. So I'm going to move down a little bit, and we'll see Vladimir trying again to bring some kind of external relevance into the world of the play. And Vladimir says, "Did you ever read the Bible?" Estragon, "The Bible? I must have taken a look at it. Do you remember the Gospels?" Of course, no, I don't know that Estragon can read. He's a body. I remember then he can feel, and he can see, it seems. So he says, "I remember the maps of the Holy Land. Colored they were, very pretty. The Dead Sea was pale blue. The very look of it made me thirsty. That's where we'll go, I used to say. That's where we'll go for our honeymoon. We'll swim. We'll be happy." Vladimir, "You should have been a poet." Estragon, gesturing towards his rags, "I was. Isn't that obvious? Nobody buys poetry. Poetry is about being. It's why it's hard to read poetry, because it's not doing. And reading poetry feels like you can feel like you're not doing anything, or that the poet's wasting your time. Because if they have something to say, then why the hell don't they say it? What's with these endless metaphors that are trailing off in something like The Wasteland? Particularly modern and postmodern poems, they are a lot like this play. They refuse to do for you, and they force you into a posture of being. And if you don't like it, the only thing to do is to walk away from the poem. It's not gonna perform for you. Lucky is like a poem in this play, and he's broken. Poetry is broken. Lucky is poetry. He's creativity, and he talks like a madman. Although I'm going to walk through his monologue, it's not simply nonsensical. It's as we'll see, it's that too much. Lucky's been made to do, and he hasn't been allowed to be, and it's broken him. And Pozo complains. Pozo is like a businessman, and he's whipped Lucky like a rented mule to generate ideas. One can almost imagine that Lucky is the research and development section of Pozo's factory. So instead of allowing Lucky to regenerate as a poet, Pozo has beaten hell out of him to make things that will make money, make things that I can take to market. And when that finally breaks Lucky, Pozo takes Lucky to the market. He's now going to sell. That's sort of the goose and the golden eggs. The only thing left to sell is Lucky himself, because Lucky is broken and can no longer produce, can no longer prostitute his poetic abilities for mere market value. So poems make nothing happen, as W.H. Auden said, which means they're very valuable. It's hard to make nothing happen. It's really important. We don't think it is. It's really important, and it's really hard to do. Meditating is an attempt to make nothing happen. It's hard to do. In any way, they're commercializing meditating a lot. So you have podcasts, you have people who pretty much meditate for you, and make it seem like you're doing it. Can you just be with yourself? Can you be with nothing else? We can't do it very well, and we can't do it for very long. So Estragon says, yes. He wants to talk about the thieves. He says, yes, the two thieves. Do you remember the story? No. Shall I tell it to you? No. It'll pass the time. So he's going to tell two thieves crucified at the same time as our Savior. One, our what? Our Savior. Two thieves. One is supposed to have been saved, and the other damned. Saved from what? Hell. I'm going. He does not move. Vladimir. And yet, notice how often that word yet is used. How is it, this is not boring you, I hope, how is it that of the four evangelists, the four people who wrote the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's four versions of Christ's life. And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John each wrote their recollection of the life of Christ. And they overlap a lot, but they're not identical. And there's many, many instances where something that's mentioned a lot by Mark is not mentioned at all by Luke, and so on. So the Bible itself, the sacred scripture of Judeo-Christianity, is also a composite piece. We got all these different versions, and we can say it's the word of God, but it was written down by people, and they didn't all write it down the same way. I mean, the Quran is interesting in the sense that if you think of Muhammad as he took dictation from God. So whatever else you want to argue about the Quran, it's got a single point of view. Now, to the degree that it's viewed as sacred, it's the point of view of God, as told to Muhammad, who then writes it down so others can learn about the point of view of God. So there is he's a prophet, of course, and there's an intermediary. Doesn't claim to be the Son of God the way Christ does in Christianity. So there's a fundamental difference, although both Islam and Christianity share the Abrahamic tradition. Stories of Genesis and Moses and so on. There's a lot of, and even Christ. Christ is there's an awareness of Jesus in the Quran, and he's mostly as a teacher, and not as the Son of God. But anyway, you've got these four versions of how Christ was the Son of God. That God so loved the world that he gave his only son, and the only way that we could be saved, because we'd sinned, Adam and Eve had sinned and kicked out of Garden of Eden. God is perfect. He can't accept us into heaven if we sin, because that's imperfect. How is he going to get out of that? Well, he will send his own son, and that son will die, and his death will purge the sins of all mankind. So Christ so loved the world that he died for our sins. He himself had not sinned, but he took on all the sins and took on all the punishment. And this opens the door again for potentially being saved. So Christ is our Savior in that sense, and we can be redeemed from original sin. Estragon understands none of this. He doesn't know what he's talking. Saved from what? Damned from what? Hell, what? So he says to, this is not boring you, I hope. How is it that of the four evangelists, only one speaks of a thief being saved? The four of them were there, or thereabouts, and only one speaks of a thief being saved. So he's treating the four evangelicals as like journalists, like they were all there when Christ was crucified. So how can they have written not exactly different versions, but why didn't they more or less write the same version? And this is his problem with the four versions of the crucifixion of Christ. The four of them were there, or thereabouts, and only one speaks of being saved. Come on, Gogo, return the ball, can't you, once in a way? Estragon, with exaggerated enthusiasm. I find this really most extraordinarily interesting. Vladimir, 1 out of 4. Of the 3, 2 don't mention any thieves at all, and the third says that both of them abused him. Who? What? What's all this about? Abused who? The Savior. Why? Because he wouldn't save them. From hell? Imbecile. From death. I thought you said hell. From death. From death. Well, what of it? Then the 2 of them must have been damned. And why not? But 1 of the 4 says that 1 of the 2 was saved. Well, they don't agree. That's all there is to it. Vladimir. But all 4 were there, and only 1 speaks of a thief being saved. Why believe him rather than the others? Who believes him? Everybody. It's the only version they know. Estragon. People are bloody ignorant apes. So what bothers Vladimir is not even that there's four slightly different versions, but that only one has been taken as the right version. So the story was, it was that when Christ was crucified, there were two other thieves on that particular day. Now, Christ was crucified for claiming that he was Jews, and Pontius Pilate, who was the Roman emissary in the Jerusalem, he didn't want to crucify Christ. He didn't get it. Why am I killing this guy? He's not a thief. So he asked the crowd, "What am I doing?" And he asked Christ. He says, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And Christ says, "You have said so," which is typical Christian Christ remark. Where it's kind of, he doesn't say yes, he doesn't say no, and the people keep saying, "Crucify him, crucify him," because Christ had become a threat to Judaism, to the elders, to the rabbis. I mean, he was forming a following that was taking people away. Christ didn't think of himself as Christian. He thought of himself as somebody who was reforming Judaism, and in his attempts to reform Judaism, another religion emerged from that, which broke off from Judaism and became Christianity, although it takes all of its heritage from the Old Testament, and then it branches off into the New Testament. Judaism stops at the end of the Old Testament. It doesn't start because the Savior hasn't come for the Judaic tradition. But the Savior comes, Christ, and then he goes again, which is kind of awkward. The Christianity is a millennialist religion. It's a religion that's based on an imminent apocalypse. Christ had come again. The end of the world was going to come, and then it didn't, and then it didn't, and then it didn't. And eventually Christianity had to pivot away from claiming to know when Christ, or when the end of the world would come, because it's been 2,000 years now, and the world still hasn't ended. And at a certain point, you begin to say, well, are we sure that was Christ? Because the end of the world is supposed to come after Christ arrives, and you said it would, and it didn't, and now it's 2,000 years later. So this is how meaning gets generated. We have mythologies, and they become these assumptions of the truth, and with reference to them, we're able to construct a retroactive story, which we then mistake as our essence, so we can go back to this idea that we are emerging from our essence, but it leaves us vulnerable to oppression, to ideology, to lies, to other people telling us who we are. And then they discuss their tree, and they discuss what they're waiting for. Vladimir says at one point, he should be here, Vladimir. He didn't say for sure he'd come. And that's, Estragon's like, he should be here. This is now. This is all, the only thing there is now. Vladimir always translates now into yet. He didn't say for sure he'd come. So he may not have come, he may not come yet. And if he doesn't come, we'll come back tomorrow, Estragon, and then the day after tomorrow, possibly, and so on, Vladimir. The point is, until he comes, Vladimir, you're merciless. No, there you're mistaken, Estragon. What did we do yesterday, Vladimir? What did we do yesterday? Yes, angrily. Nothing is certain when you're about. Yeah, they also don't have much memory, because they do the same thing every day. So there's no way to remember what they did the day before, because it's different from what they're doing now, which is nothing. Because that's why the other reason doing is so important to us. It marks the occasion. Celebrations mark occasions, birthdays, and so on. Finishing anything, and then rewarding yourself for having. It's a way to punctuate the relentless endlessness of time, which comes straight up against the unavoidable fact of mortality. The human condition, those two, the need to make sense of something when we also know that we won't be here forever, and whatever sense we make of our life will go with us. I mean, someone might build a monument or something, but that won't be us. We might live on for a while in the memories of other people. So Estragon says, in my opinion, we were here. You recognize the place? I didn't say that. Well, that makes no difference, Vladimir. All the same, that tree, that bog, you're sure it was this evening? What? That we were to wait. He said Saturday. I think. You think. You can see the emphasis on the word think. I must have made a note of it, Vladimir says. He fumbles in his pockets, bursting with rubbish. Estragon, but what's Saturday? And is it Saturday? Is it not rather Sunday or Monday or Friday? Vladimir looking wildly. So Estragon is really torturing him, looking wildly about him as though the date might be inscribed in the landscape. It's not possible. Or Thursday, what'll we do? If he came yesterday and we weren't here, you may be sure he won't come again today. So Vladimir is introducing doubt. Remember, Descartes went back and forth between the only thing I'm sure of is that I don't know. And therefore, I think. So Estragon is the first part of Descartes' statement, and Vladimir is the second part, but this part's the only one we remember. That goes back to the story of the four thieves. Like, why did we? Because we're more comfortable with that version. But there's really two versions of Descartes. There is that life is doubt, living is being is doubting, and then he said, but we can say that the doubting is a form of thinking. And then we all seized on that. Like, yes, I think, therefore I am. Not I doubt, therefore I am. But that's equally true. And thinking is always a tension between knowing and doubting. That's what thinking is constantly assessing the differential between knowing and doubting. Did my friend say 2:30 or 2 o'clock? Let me think about it. I doubt he said 2:30. I doubt he said 2 o'clock. I think he said 2:30. I think he said 2 o'clock. I doubt, I think, I doubt, I think, I doubt, I think. But what modernity is seized on the thinking, and it's lopped off the body, and it's lopped off doubting, and anything we don't know is just what we don't know yet. So what do we do? But if he came yesterday, he won't come again today. But you said we were here yesterday. I may be mistaken. So Estragon's terrible. When he said we were here yesterday, then he said if he came and we weren't here, then we missed him and he won't come again. And Vladimir says, you said we were here. I may be mistaken. I mean, nothing is certain when Vladimir is about. He keeps stirring, Estragon keeps stirring it up again. He's like the four different versions of Christ and the thieves. Which one actually happened? Because of the version everyone remembers is there are two thieves, and one of the thieves, rather sarcastically, from the cross, they're all being crucified, he turns to Christ and says, well, if you're really the Son of God, well, why don't you just get down off your cross and what the hell are you doing here? Why would the Son of God let himself be nailed to a piece of wood? And the other thief said to that thief, you better shut up, because he might be the Son of God. And so Christ turned to that thief and said, I say unto you, before this day is done, you will be in the kingdom of heaven. And he didn't say anything to the other thief. So the interpretation of that one version, and the only complete version we have is one of the four, is that the man who showed at least doubt / faith, like, I don't know that you're Christ, I don't know that you're not Christ, so I'm not going to taunt you, he got saved. And the one who made fun of him and said, you're just delusional. If you were Son of God, you'd just make everybody burst into flames and walk out of here. And he presumably was damned. So the one with faith got saved, the one without faith got damned. And this is a building block of modern subjectivity, that we need to do this thinking, doubting to move forward, or it's the only thing that will save us. Otherwise, we're damned. Esther sounds a little more like the thief who keeps saying, why don't you get off the cross? He's very practical about these matters. But if he's damned, then Vladimir is saved. And if they're both parts of one person, then it's just the same old binary: saved, damned, saved to damned. And we worry about that too. Is there life after death or not? And if there is life after death, what does this life mean? And if there is life after death, what does this life mean? It's still got the same question. It seems like more of an answer if there's something after death, because then this life can be seen as a not yet. We're not in heaven yet. But if there's no heaven, then you're stuck with all we have is now. There is no yet. There is no to be. And we don't know. And we still have to live. So when Pozo comes on the scene, Pozo seems like someone who didn't get the memo that the world has lost all markers and there's no way to, because he still seems to think he's in charge. Hello, I'm Pozo. Do you know who I am? And they're like, no. no clue. And he's like, well, that's weird. And they're like, well, we're just on the road. He goes, yeah, the road's public. It's a disgrace, but we can't do anything about it. So he comes off like a Trump-esque businessman, like he's in charge, he's in power, and maybe he was, but Lucky's broken. And if there's anything that explains why this world has, gone completely to crap, it might be that Lucky's broken, that this is a play about depression. Each of us has a Lucky inside of us. We have a Lucky who generates, is imaginative, and who says, generates things that we didn't think of. Lucky tries to think. He's ordered to think, but he's broken. His thinking can't generate anything because his thinking was exploited for profit for so long by the Pozos of the world that there's nothing poetic about it anymore. I think about this in the university sometimes. Like humanities is the Lucky of university. It's not, and this is no aspersions are being cast here, but computer science is not the Lucky of university. Management's not the Lucky. It's called humanities for a reason. It's about human. It's about being human. That doesn't make it better or worse than all the other ones. But there's no question that humanities is seen as a liability in the university. I mean, we don't get the same amount of funding. Half the guys, maybe more, you're in this class because some dean said you have to take a class in the humanities. Why? Well, for one thing, if we don't make people take the humanities, there won't be any humanities. And the university without humanities is a trade school, more or less. And we like to, think that universities can have philosophy and sociology and history and psychology and art and cinema and literature. None of these things pay much anymore. I mean, they have to pay me. I'm a humanities professor, but I'm not going to invent the next antidepressant in my lab for them. Every time I take a grant, they have a box where they say, they have two boxes. One is, will you be experimenting on humans? And I'm like, I don't know. If you count my students, yeah, I guess. Oh, no, that's right. The question is, you be experimenting on vertebrates. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to call my students. But yeah, I'm experimenting on vertebrates. You guys are out there. I'm trying to figure out what I'm talking about. So I should check yes, but I kind of knew that's probably not what they meant. So I didn't. And then the next question is, explain how your research could produce something that could be monetized. And I said, no, it's not going to happen. It's not what my research produces. I'm not making widgets. I'm talking about life. And we don't get anywhere near the same amount of funding. I don't complain that much because I don't need a lot of money to do this. My lab is my library. I don't really. A lot of humanities people get mad because scientists get like $50,000 grants. I don't know what the hell I'd do that was ethical with a $50,000 grant. I don't need that much money to read a book or go to a movie. I mean, I like to go to a conference, or I used to fly to France for a James Joyce conference in Paris. It's fantastic. I appreciate it. But if they don't pay me to go to a conference in Paris, I'm not going to forget everything I know about James Joyce, or I've been to Ireland to Samuel Beckett conferences, and which I'm talking about right now, but I wouldn't suddenly not know what I'm saying about Beckett because they didn't pay for me to go to a conference. So I'm actually not complaining. I'm not, saying scientists get more than me. Wow. I get it, actually. They get more than me because they need it. They need beakers and God knows what else, butane burners. I only did this in high school, so I don't know what else you guys use, centrifugal things, whatever. You need them, and things come out of them that make money too. And so humanities is science is almost like the football team in universities in the US. So the football team makes way more money than the university. The football coach of the top 10 football teams, they make $2-3 million. They make 20, 30, 40 times what I make. And they don't teach anything. I mean, and they're good coaches. I'll give them credit for that. But their market value is way more than me, because I'm not running a team that gets put on television where ads are bought, where multiple millions of dollars are made because people like to watch college football. There's nothing wrong with that. I can't claim that ability to generate money. So within the parameters of what modernity values, I get it, that I'm a luxury, I'm a liability. I'm only here because because science makes so much more than humanities, we can afford humanities. But believe me, I've sat in meeting after meeting where it's clear that if we ever have to cut a department, it's going to be humanities. We're the mascot of liberal arts at this point. People like to have us around because they're like Shakespeare and all that, but they think we're expendable. Frankly, I think we're about the only thing between us and the abyss, but why wouldn't I think that? But it's weird to teach something that I'm convinced we will perish if we don't pay attention to it. But the world that I'm trying to persuade that doesn't think that I'm important at all in that regard. And that's why I've continued to teach this class, because I'm fascinated that I'm actually not in favor of making you take the class. I argued against making a humanities requirement for scientists or for anyone who's not in humanities. This sort of eat your vegetables approach. I mean, I sort of get it, but what I try and do now is I assume many of you are here on sufferance. I mean, you're here because you have to be here because you're pre-med and you can't get a degree unless you take humanities. And the only thing, you have two reasons you don't like that. One, it's not your idea, and I get it. And the other is you're not sure you'll be able to perform as well because this isn't what you've trained for. And you need an A, you need a 4.0. Now you're taking humanities, and you might get a 3.5 or 3.0 in this class. There was a time when that didn't matter. It was called the liberal arts unit because you're supposed to take a little bit of everything liberally. And we've become so professionalized that you've got to get into your graduate school so you can get into your profession with a 4.0 GPA, and you can't afford to take a class in a discipline that you're not as familiar with, and then you're forced to. And I've contorted myself like a pretzel to try and make it possible to still get a high grade. But the other thing the other challenge to myself is, ideally, and I'm not saying I do this all the time, I would like the people who took this class without any interest and even annoyed and would have not taken it if someone would just have given them the credit. I hope that when the class is over, they'll be glad that you'll be glad that you were made to do it. That a class you wouldn't have taken, except that you were forced to, winds up being a class you were glad you were forced to take. If I can do that, and it's not easy, and I don't do it every time for every student. But there's a saying, there's a Buddhist saying, when you're ready, the teacher will arrive. And that takes some pressure off of me. I don't reach all students all the time, but I can't arrive for people who aren't ready. And I don't want to. I don't want to trick you. I don't want to lead a cult. I want to teach you ways of thinking, not how to think like me, and not how to think what I think. It's actually not of interest. You'll notice that's why I have journals in this class. I want to know what you think. I mean, the midterm and the final does assess whether you've been watching the lectures and so on, and there may be some point to that. But even in the midterm and the final, there's no right answer. What you want to give me a discussion that shows you can interact with the material in a meaningful way. Like if I give you the quote about the four Gospels, you'll have something to say about it, partly because you listened to this tape and you looked at the class notes and you've read the play. And then, so at one point, Estragon gets anxious about whether they should leave or why do they keep waiting. And Estragon's the one who says, what exactly did we ask him for, Godot? Were you not there, Vladimir says. I can't have been listening. It's just classic of Estragon. You'd be at this super important point and just missed it. And Vladimir can't answer the question. Oh, nothing very definite. Estragon says, a kind of prayer. Vladimir, precisely. A vague supplication. Exactly. How can a vague supplication be exact? But in a way, yeah, they can't ask Godot for something specific. Because if they were to get it, then there would be nothing to wait for yet. So supplication, a prayer. And what did he reply? For this thing we can't even say we know we asked for? That he'd see Estragon, that he couldn't promise anything, or that he'd have to think it over. In the quiet of his home, consult his family, his friends, his agents, his correspondence, his books, his bank account, Vladimir, before taking a decision. It's the normal thing, Vladimir. Is it not? Estragon, I think it is. Vladimir, I think so too. But then for the first time, Estragon gets anxious. The body can get anxious. And we? I beg your pardon. I said, and we? I don't understand. Where do we come in? Come in. Take your time. Come in. On our hands and knees. As bad as that. Your worship wishes to assert his prerogatives? We've no rights anymore? Vladimir, you'd make me laugh if it wasn't prohibited. We've lost our rights? Vladimir, we got rid of them. Now that's the essence of, political essence of tyranny, that under what Sartre, the existentialist, called the burden of freedom, we give up our rights, we get rid of our rights, because the burden of trying to figure out what to do instead of doing what we're told is too much. So someone like Trump or Hitler or Mussolini or whomever comes along and says, I know what you need to do. It will be the right thing. I am die Führer. I am the father. And all you got to do is what I tell you to do. And then you can stop thinking about it. It's a very, and the QAnon people and all the rest of it are kind of a shocking and kind of sad example. I mean, for the ones who, there are a lot of QAnon people who didn't storm the Capitol and don't want to. I mean, I read about one in the New York Times who said, well, I wouldn't storm the Capitol. And I felt sorry for that woman because she has no friends anymore. Her family tried an intervention because it's really kind of a cult that she was posting on Facebook all day about the Satanists and the pedophiles and the deep state and how everybody was corrupt. And you go deep enough into QAnon, they actually think the Democrats are actually lizard people. I'm not making this up, who've taken the form of men. And that's how deep down the rabbit hole it goes. I don't know if this woman was that far down the rabbit hole, but she had given up everything for her faith in this crazy story. So her family can't talk to her anymore. Her friends, she doesn't have any. She has this one reporter from the New York Times who calls her every now and then to see how she's doing. She's just all by herself, posting nonsense on Facebook. It's a really scary, sad scenario. But it's where you can get to in postmodernism, where you're so desperate for a certitude that you can't generate for yourself, that you give away your life, you give away your rights for a fake certitude that somebody else puts together for you. In this class, my class, this lecture, all my lectures are an attempt to give you the confidence and the strength, and it's not easy, to create your own proximity of certitude, and also to be more tolerant of your incertitude. You don't know everything, you don't have to know everything, and you won't ever know everything, and knowing everything isn't even a terribly reasonable goal. I mean, we have Google now anyway. Who cares? Google can know everything, if by that you mean facts. Don't torture yourself because you don't know everything. Why not, spend time pondering what you know, instead of assuming that it's the next thing you don't know that advances your knowledge. Maybe in this play would be an example, and literature is an example. We're still reading Shakespeare 500 years later. What's wrong with us? We can't read? We don't know how Hamlet ends? Yeah, we do, but it's a work of genius. It's about the human condition. We read it over and over again. It says something new to every generation, generations that Shakespeare never met. Excuse me, that's one of the powers of art. So Pozo comes in, and I'm conscious of the time. I'm going to build to the end of my Act 1 discussion. Pozo finally at one point says, do you want to see him think? Because Lucky comes stumbling on stage carrying these two super heavy suitcases, which we find out later are full of sand, so there's absolutely no point. He's overburdened with the demands of Pozo, who's got a rope around his neck. They can see the rope burns on his neck. And there you can look on the internet for various pictures of what Lucky has looked like in stage productions, and he's depressed. And it's possible that Pozo and Lucky are yet two more versions of the same person. So possibly in this stage, we have four components of the modern person. We've got Pozo, the businessman, trying to get wealthy, trying to accumulate. We have Lucky, that poetic part of us that you commercialize at your peril. We have Estragon, who is the body. And we have Vladamir, who's the ego, the mind, the negotiator, the one who's constantly trying to keep the other three into some kind of balance, even though there's no way to balance them, because the ego is constantly trying to complete itself, which is, and being alive and being human is to be incomplete. It is to fundamentally lack. The question is, are we going to lack something in living? The question is, how are we going to organize our lives around the unavoidability of lack and loss? And filling it with a gain that we claim will yet complete us is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. But I want to get. I'm going to end by giving a reading of Pozo's speech to let you, of Lucky's speech to let you see that there's a point to Lucky's speech. Right now I'm scrolling to try and find Lucky's speech. Hold on a sec. I think I might have it. No. Okay. All right, so let me get it in this one. Okay, that's not the one I want. Sorry, bear with me. It's a problem with these virtual classes. Okay, I got it. If I could edit this, I'd skip the last little bit, but I don't know how to do that. So they ask Lucky to think. So what this speech is, it is an attempt to generate meaning. And it shows us all the ways we have of building meaning, like a sort of intellectual Lego kit. Lego kits are really interesting. When you buy a Lego kit, something on the box is what the Lego kit should look like when the Legos are constructed, and then they have an instruction manual, and depending on how big the Lego kit is, and believe me, I made hundreds of these. I got 4 boys. I made the damn Death Star. So don't mess with me. But Lego Death Star, that was hard. That was 5 million pieces, I think. But you got to put it together according to the instruction. And of course, every time I made a Lego kit, there were always a few pieces left over because I didn't do it right. So I would tell my kids, they always give you extra pieces. Because I was damned if I was going to take that stupid Lego thing apart to reach. I just finished, direction number 96, and I'm not going to take it back down to direction number 4 to find the little red thing that I didn't put in the right place. That is going to become an extra piece that they just kept in there in case I needed it, and I don't, because this thing's done. But then what happens inevitably, Legos fall apart, and it goes into it's sort of like reincarnation. It goes into a gigantic bin of Lego bits, and I'm not making it again. And now most of the time the instructions are gone. So then they just started making things up without instructions. And ideas are like that. Ideas are like Lego kits. And just because you've constructed the Death Star with your idea doesn't mean the Legos were intended to be the Death Star. It's the way you arrange the ideas. Each Lego is a thought, an idea, and then you arrange it in the shape of the Death Star, and then you say that's what all these ideas were meant to be. No, it's not. It's the way when you break it all back down again, they all look the same. The pieces all look the same. They're just Lego pieces. And that's what Lucky's speech is like. He's showing that these philosophies that we have, these scientific methods, they're Lego kits. We put together something that looks like the Millennial Falcon or looks like a ship or whatever, but we can break it back down again and make something else. And we can maybe not remember how to put it back in the shape it was before. So he begins kind of with this confidence of like, okay, I'm going to say what's true and then I'm going to add to it. Given the existence, as uttered forth in the public works of Puncher and Watman, of a personal God, quack, 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 with white beard, quack, 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 outside time, without extension, who from the heights of divine apathia, divine athambia, divine aphasia, loves us dearly, with some exceptions, for reasons unknown, but time will tell, and suffers, like the divine Miranda, with those who, for reasons unknown, but time will tell, are plunged in torment, plunged in fire, whose fire flames, if that continues, and who can doubt it, will fire the firmament, that is to say, blast hell to heaven, so blue, still, and calm, so calm, with a calm which even though intermittent is better than nothing, but not so fast, and considering what is more, that as a result of the labors left unfinished, now that what is more is funny because he hasn't gotten anywhere yet. Everything keeps sliding back into itself. The Lego kit keeps breaking down into the Lego components, no matter how many ways he tries to set a ground from which he can build up. The result of the labors left unfinished, crowned by the Academy of Anthropopoetry of Essay and Posse of Testu and Cunard, it is established beyond all doubt, all other doubt, than that which clings to the labors of men, that as a result of the labors finished of Testu and Cunard, it is established as hereinafter, but not so fast, for reasons unknown, that as a result of the public works of Puncher and Watman, it is established beyond all doubt, that in view of the labors of Fartov and Belcher, farting and belching, left unfinished for reasons unknown of Testu and Cunard, left unfinished, it is established, what many deny, that man in posse of Testu and Cunard, that man in essay, that man in short, that man in brief, in spite of the strides of alimentation and defecation, wastes and pines, wastes and pines. Now you begin to see one of the other points here is this kind of invention of ideas is another defense against mortality and the chaos and void of being. Beckett said one time, the challenge is to present the chaos for what it is and not pretend that it's something else. And Godot does that. It presents the chaos for what it is. It doesn't pretend that it's an adventure movie. It doesn't pretend that Wonder Woman's going to figure it out, or the entire League of Legion, or whatever they're called, Superman, Batman. They don't even get their own movies anymore. They don't have to gang up, like some weird fraternity of superpowers, so they can go get the one bad guy. Okay, so because all of a sudden we've gone from the ideas to defecation, waste, pines, wastes, pines, and concurrently, simultaneously, what is more, for reasons unknown, in spite of his strides of physical culture, the practice of sports, such as tennis, football, running, cycling, swimming, flying, floating, riding, gliding, conating, eating, tennis of all kinds, dying, flying, sports of all sorts, autumn, summer, winter, tennis of all kinds, hockey of all sorts, penicillin and academia. In a word, I resume flying, gliding, golf over 9 and 18 holes, tennis of all sorts. In a word, for reasons unknown, infectum, polum, fulum, clapham, namely, concurrently, simultaneously. What is more, for reasons unknown, but time will tell, fades away. I resume. Fulham, Clapham, in a word, the dead lost per head since the death of Bishop Berkeley, being to the tune of 1 inch 4, 1 ounce per head, approximately, by and large, more or less, to the nearest decimal good measure, round figures, stark naked, and stockinged feet in Connemara. So now comes numbers measuring that will make the chaos seem to be something else. In a word, for reasons unknown, no matter what matter, the facts are there. And considering what is much more grave, that in light of the labors lost of Steinweg and Peterman, it appears, and he's making fun of footnotes here, of citing other people to claim that that's the base of what you're saying. So I can cite Beckett in an essay of mine, but then who did Beckett cite? And okay, so he cited Shakespeare. Who did Shakespeare cite? Aristotle. It goes back forever to a vanishing point. Citations don't create foundations. They just mimic. Citations mimic foundations. Even the scientific method keeps acting like the next discovery is the new foundation, but it's a rearrangement and an elaboration of what went before. So let's see, Peter. That in the plains, in the mountains, by the seas, by the rivers, running water, running fire, the air is the same, and then the earth, namely the air, and then the earth, and the great cold, the great dark, the air and the earth, abode of stones, and the great cold, alas, alas, and the year of their Lord, 600 and something, the air, the earth, the sea, the earth, abode of stones, in the great deeps, the great cold, on sea, on land, and in the air. I resume, for reasons unknown, in spite of the tennis, The facts are there, but time will tell. I resume, but not so fast. I resume the skull, fading, fading, fading. So we're back to wasting away. Notice how the body is becoming more visible in this speech. It's buried by words. The body's buried by words. And as the words start to scatter, we see the skeleton, the ignored body, which has died and wasted away, pined away. And that's another kind of metaphor for a depression of sorts, where what you think, what you claim is important, what you claim that you're driving for isn't the point at all. And what gets left behind is what you always needed, and what you left it for was never wanted. So the skull, you don't know you want it until you get it. Fading, fading, and concurrently, simultaneously, what is more, for reasons unknown, in spite of the tennis, or on the beard, the flames, the tears, the stones so blue, so calm, alas, alas, on the skull. The skull in Connemara, in spite of the tennis. The labors abandoned, left unfinished, graver still, abode of stone, so skulls and stones are emerging. In a word, I resume, alas, alas, abandoned, unfinished, the skull in Connemara, in spite of the tennis, the skull, alas, the stones, Cunard. And then finally, there, tennis, the stone, so calm, Cunard, unfinished. Poser says, his hat. Vladimir seizes Lucky's hat, the silence of Lucky. So they take off the thinking hat. They can't stand it. They're literally in physical pain. And when you watch the play, what the other three people are doing while Lucky is just ranting is they're holding their heads. They're trying not to hear him. They're falling over. It's like excruciating. And thought is broken. And the body, the skull, the stone that was always buried underneath it, the thing that Descartes tried to bury, the body, mortality, comes finally to the surface. There aren't enough words to cover it up. You'll notice the other phrase, in spite of the tennis. And tennis was one of Beckett's favorite sports. His other one was cricket. But tennis is a very unique game in the sense that, unlike basketball, it's not timed, or football. Tennis theoretically can go on forever, because the tennis game's not over until one of the other players has won by, I forget exactly, is it a set or some amount? And you watch these matches, you have to win by 2 points. You can't win by 1 point. So there have been these legendary tennis matches. Maybe an average match takes, say, 2 hours, but there have been ones that have gone on 7 hours because they go back and forth. And there's theoretically they could never end the game. So I think the reason he keeps sticking in spite of the tennis is tennis is a sport that mimics immortality. There is no set deadline. I mean, because even in baseball, baseball games aren't timed, but there's 9 innings and there's 3 outs per inning. So it could take, and then it's true you keep playing in baseball, extra innings, at least in something like the World Series, until someone wins. But it's not quite the same volley of tennis. And when you think about it, tennis is the most like conversation. You hit the ball and the ball gets hit back. And if you remember earlier, Vladimir said to Estragon, come on, Estragon, can't you return the ball once in a while? Imagine playing tennis by yourself in a meadow. You serve and then crickets. There's nothing. Imagine playing tennis without a net. What's the point of the net? The net in tennis could be seen as suffering. And yet, without the net, without suffering, the life and tennis won't make any sense, because there's no equal obstacle to overcome on the part of the other person. And how will you know when your ball failed to clear the net? Well, then the net will stop it, and it's the same net on both sides, and so it will also stop the other opponent's ball. You don't have to argue whether or not your ball went over the net. It either will go over the net or it won't. You do have to argue about the out of bounds in this famous scenes of screaming at refs. One reason we like sports so much is they all mimic certitude, and we love statistics, because there used to be a baseball announcer, when someone would hit a ball, it was obviously going to go out of the park, they would say, and ball is history, that it's a home run. And even as a kid, I remember thinking, I don't know if that's history. I thought World War II was history. But it's a statistic. Babe Ruth hit, this amount of home runs. So sports have become incredibly important in modernity, and we're trying desperately. I sometimes wonder if we should. I'm not a huge sports fan, although I have been at times. I've enjoyed watching the Raptors. That was great with my namesake, Kawhi Leonard. I see. I felt more important for that whole series, but we're trying desperately to continue to have sports during COVID, and it's a uphill battle, right? I had 2 people test positive, and they keep canceling games. And I get it; they keep trying. We'd like to have a hockey season, and they're doing really creative things. But and so I don't object to that. But what it also underlines for me is sports are almost a religion in a way. They give us another distraction, right? So in spite of the tennis, your mortality will still arrive. But in the meantime, there is tennis, there is basketball, there is football, and they're huge so-called spectator sports, because for the 2 hours that we watch, there's drama, but there's also lines. There's a referee. There's an inbounds. There's an out of bounds. There's a certitude. 10 yards is a first down, not 9, and you get over the goal line by an inch, or you don't, and an inch over the goal line is 6 points, and an inch shot is nothing. We just enjoy that so much because it's the opposite of modernity. It's the opposite of Estragon, who makes everything uncertain. So Estragon is the opposite of sports, and that's where Vladimir gets so impatient. Nothing is certain when you're about. Sports make us feel like that life still somehow makes sense, because within the parameters of the game, things make sense for a period of time. And also we can control conflict. I mean, football games can be almost like war, but no one's getting killed. And so everything can be, all of our human instincts, the good, the bad, and the ugly, can be played out in front of us in a contained way with a definitive ending. And speaking of definitive endings, I'm going to stop. It is 10:05 here, which means it's late, sort of late for me. I'll post this, and I will see you guys live Wednesday at 11. Okay. Have a good night or day, or whenever you have a look at this. Bye for